Hello, this is the Psychic Zone with Todd Siegel. Actually, I should call this the Psycho Zone, the way people have been acting lately. I know I haven't been on here for a while. I've been thinking about doing a podcast, and I even asked for input from some of my followers on Facebook, and I appreciate your input, but I got a lot of crazy questions. For instance, do we have any choice of not coming back to this life again? And the answer is no, you have no choice. So you better make a lot of money, bury it in the ground, and when you're reborn, contact a psychic or a medium to help try to locate that money again so you have some cash flow when you come back to this life. I'm just kidding. You know, our perception of past lives is not exactly the way I see it. We're in a physical form here, but that's just a small part of it. It's actually kind of by chance we come back in a physical form because we are always here in a spirit form. Okay? And if somebody comes back to this life, it's not necessarily in a physical form. One of the good examples is if you've lost your favorite dog, he passed away, and then you get a new dog, and then all of a sudden that new dog starts behaving like your old dog did. Certain things. I mean, the dog goes over to your closet, doesn't even know you had a treat in there for him, but that's something that your old dog might have done. Okay? Doesn't necessarily mean your old dog came back physically in that new dog, but the spirit of that dog is still around. There are many levels and there are many dimensions of being here. Just like there's many dimensions of subconscious, unconsciousness, like when I'm focusing on a reading, there's it's like internet browsers. There's like 20 browsers all open at once inside of my head, kind of focusing on different aspects of how I'm going to read that person. It could be visually, it could be from the spirit level, it could be from somebody who passed who's given me some information. It could be on somebody else associated with that person that I'm getting some information. If the person I'm reading for is not so readable, I will find other kind of angles into that person. I get that all the time. People get very emotional, so it's very hard to focus on that person because they're really emotional. They can either see the worst outcome coming or they are blocking, what the information that should be coming through. So I have to work extra hard sometimes finding an angle to help that person. It's amazing. Children don't have all the baggage that we do, and they're naturally intuitive. So children are always very easy to read. It goes for animals too. But I guess what I'll share today is just before I start complaining. There are so many people with issues right now. I can't even begin to start on that. Some of the readings I've done, especially with love, partnerships, marriage, that kind of thing, people are just losing it. I mean, partners have just gone crazy. And it's not just my assessment or agreeing with my client. These are actual assessments from mental health professionals, and, so I've got a lot of clients in very hard situations right now, going through troubles in their own marriages or partnerships. And of course, the justice system won't do anything about it because it's so far corrupted now. And I'm serious. The justice system is scary, really scary. No, it does not depend state to state. In general, in this country, it's pretty darn scary. But a lot of people weren't listening to me back in COVID saying that this is the new war. And people have gone about their lives. Oh, we're past all of that. No, we're not. The pandemic was just the beginning of the problems that we have now, and they have escalated so bad. I even said, I think it was 2022 or 2021, I forget. I said a quarter of the population's going to be gone in a few years, and that's very, very true. The amount of, I should say, backlash from COVID has caused a really big thinning of the population. And that's just not in my eyes, but that is coming from people, clients that I have who are nurses, doctors, people who work with a lot of people in their daily work. And the reasons, well, you'll have to research it more, but that was a man-made virus that actually got into our systems and has not left many systems, whether it was by air or whether it was by needle. It is still in people's systems. And I warned people about that a long time ago. We are still falling prey to the offsets of that illness. It also has a psychological factor going on too. And that has happened with numerous cases that I've worked on. If you want the facts, you're not going to be able to research them on the internet or to get the facts from the mainstream media, okay? But there are plenty of professionals out there who have shed their view. They're often called conspiracy theorists. But what I've seen lately in my readings, I do readings every day, is insane. It's really insane. Dementia's a big one. Now, you might be thinking that I'm talking about, your 70 or 80-year-old father or somebody who's coming down with dementia. Nope. Try 40 and 50-year-olds. Oh, yeah. Dementia onsets for younger people is huge right now. And then there's a whole bunch of other significant diseases, such as kidneys are affected, lymph node systems, okay? A lot of things having to do with the central nervous system. Okay, and remember, I'm not a doctor. This is just my opinion. But these are things that I've seen. And there's a lot of widows out there right now. And I've been hearing about it all the time. Not just through clients, but friends of their clients, family of their clients. I mean, deaths have just skyrocketed, and you will not hear that information on the mainstream media. I've also heard from a lot of clients regarding the psychological meltdown of our society. It's getting more intense. Now I see it every single day. People's windows are getting darker and their attitudes are getting meaner, as I say. And I have seen so much meanness and psychological anomalies going on. It's crazy. I mean, the other big one is the Trump derangement syndrome, which is, honestly, I cannot understand it. People have lost their minds. They look sick because of a president. Oh, well, Todd, you're agreeing with him then. No, I don't. I'm right in the middle. But this president derangement syndrome's a real thing. I mean, people are just losing it. I look at them, I'm like, what is wrong with you? And they start talking about the president. I'm like, okay. Well, so, how are things in your life? Well, the president has done this, and I'm so angry about this, and so we've got a meltdown going on over politics. And yes, the economy is actually has nothing to do with the president, first of all. What they could do is shut down the federal government. That would actually help a lot because the tax system is actually killing our economy. Not any one person, place, or thing. It's the tax system, which is crippling our economy. You end that, and a lot would change. It's complete overreach, and it has to do with every little thing that we do. And on average, your neighbors who you think are doing, they're doing so well, they just bought a new car. These people have enough debt to last 3 lifetimes if they're making a triple K salary every year. So whatever you think they have, they're not making it. But that doesn't come just from me, but I know a couple of financial advisors, and they've told me the same thing. That people are kind of on a spend craze, and they don't care when it gets paid off. They're going to pass away, and they're going to have probably 20 or 30 years debt over their passing. Anyway, so a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about are things that I talk about with clients. Of course, the mental health issues going on with husbands and wives has been a big focus for me lately. It's really pretty scary, actually. And yes, I think a lot of it has to do with the effects of the pandemic some years ago. And people even had these issues before it, they were heightened as a result of the pandemic. Believe what you want. For me, I've been spending a lot of time outdoors. And where we need to go as people, campfire outside with a bunch of long hair friends playing guitar, that's where we need to go. Okay? We need to get very grounded as a society and stop living in this toxic bubble. We really need to go back to the land and, I think of 1975 or so, went up in the hills near where I lived, the hippies were building communities and stuff like that. I mean, that's where we need to go to get grounded. You're not going to get grounded buying a new house and accumulating more debt, okay? So part of what some of my followers have asked is about the economy, so that's why I was sharing that. So when does it end? I see the economy actually in a negative state till about 2029. Okay. It's and a lot of my clients have asked about jobs, and I can only see what I can see about jobs. But when I'm looking in the environment of jobs, I'm like, you better play it safe for a little while. Because even jobs that seem to pay a few dollars more than another job. And, I always laugh at these job reports that they talk about on the news. I mean, they're, oh yeah, I'm gonna take this job for $40,000 a year. I'm not gonna be able to pay for stuff or eat, but I'm still gonna have a job. Pretty scary crap out there. I mean, the cost of living is just... It's way overhead. I had one customer say, I've got a retirement coming up. I've got $1 million. And I was just thinking, well, I'll get you a few years in this economy with a house, a car, and, other obligations that they have. And, so it's really out of control. And the system has to change. I think there's some good things happening in the system to help it change, but we've got a lot of blind people out there. And it's, I've been hearing a lot of clients, male and female, who are like, what's wrong with the people out there right now? Hey, they seem so angry, and they're just, they commute to work, every day, and they're like, oh God, the drivers are getting nastier, and yeah, so I noticed all these changes going on. And I ride a motorcycle, so I can tell you about drivers until you're blue in the head. But anyway, focusing on positive things is a very good thing. So how do you do it when there's so much negativity going on? Well, may take a lot of alcohol. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it takes some practice. So when I'm doing readings, one of the things I do is I just go blank, completely blank. I'm not worried about my truck being repaired. I'm not worrying about, a horse that's got an issue outside. I have to go totally blank, and that's just a reflex that I've had, I think, for a long time. And that's how you have to be if you're doing psychic readings. You really have to go blank. And it's very hard for people. A lot of people want to read themselves, but I tell them that's actually near impossible sometimes because it's very hard for us to read for ourselves. And we have fear. We have judgments about things. We have judgments about other people. So it's very hard for us to see clearly when we're doing a reading for ourselves. So even for myself, but if it involves other people that I'm dealing with, usually I can have a pretty good read over them. But as far as myself, I have to ask somebody else. Of course, people wanted to hear about the Moscow, Idaho case. That was one of the other questions that people were asking, and I think I've already talked about that. So there's nothing really to add. It's kind of scary to think that I feel that the real suspects are still at large right now involved with it, but that's none of my business. I've never worked officially on that case for anybody, so, but there's a lot of cases like this going on, actually. But, you know, I said before, the court justice system is pretty scary in itself. I've worked on some pretty intense cases involving custody and divorces and stuff like that. And I just cannot believe the corruption going on in the legal system is just, it's nuts. It is nuts. Of course, I don't. So when you have a client, you don't take everything as the truth from them. You know, goes for marital problems and stuff like that. I don't pick sides. And if I see a fault with my client, I'm not going to say, well, you're to blame. I'm just going to say, well, you might want to think about going about this matter a different way, you know. But I have some clients that have utter fear for their lives from these partners who just turned very wicked. Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff. Anyway, and I know people, I keep hearing the person asking me about the past lives, and on the intuitive level, whether we are part of this life or not, we have a spirit, okay? And not everybody that passes are going to be rejoining this life again. And, you know, some of the clients I've talked to have lost members of their family in their 90s, and then some have lost them very early on from accidents or drugs and crimes and stuff like that. And how, as a medium, you read people who have died, well, as we put it, maybe too soon. Their energy is very different than the people who've passed away at 98. Why? I don't know. It's just the way it is. I don't try to analyze anything when I see it, but am I saying that the younger people are more active? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But their energy overall on who they are in the spirit realm is very different than somebody who's a lot older. And in my own life, I'm dealing with aging parents. And, I'm quite alarmed when they start seeing spirits coming around them, because usually it's an indication that they're kind of half in, half out of this life. So a lot of older people, and I've heard this from everybody, clients, hospice nurses, end-of-life nurses, so to speak, who routinely experience the older people either going back to their childhood or revisiting people that have passed. They said, my sister was in the room with me. She passed a long time ago. Those kind of things. I really think, and on a positive note, I know I've talked about a lot of negative things, we really need to open people's thinking about what this life means and what death means, what love means. That's something that we really, really need to focus on. Love is all we need, famous song by John Lennon. It's true. It's true. Love is something very absent in the readings that I've been doing for people. A lot of kind of emotionless insensitivity going on. And, when I was talking about the campfire outside and, playing guitar, and we need to go back to that time of love again. We really need to. That's something that is missing. And, when you have a relationship with somebody, it takes a lot of work. You have to renew that love. The love is there, but you have to renew it a lot. And I'm just seeing people who don't connect with one another. They don't communicate. And I'm very concerned about the young population. When I mean young, I mean 20s, 30s. There's a kind of like a lack of empathy there that I've noticed. The whole love relationship thing, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but a good deal of the ones that I've talked to who are dealing with, others in that age group, I just find that there's some real problems, and not only a lack of empathy, but just some weird things that they're into, weird cultural things. And, I am kind of happy that I was born at the time that I was born. I was born in 1965. So I experienced the 70s and the 80s. The 60s to me were very violent. watching on the TV as a kid, and it was a very violent time going into the early 70s as well. I'm talking about in the world, and I'm talking about riots that were happening. There were some massive riots on the West Coast when I was born, things like that. But the 70s, for the most part, was a pretty mellow time and a pretty good place in the world, although I'm not saying relationships, you know, they were going through a real big turn in the 70s, and the roles of the sexes and all of that was happening, and divorces were up considerably in the 70s, and you know, and then going into the 80s was completely a very different thing. So if you look at each generation and how we've cohabitated together, there have been shifts, but not like the shift that we are going through now. And I'm a little worried about it. Now, I spoke to a teenager the other day, actually, for a reading, and was very hopeful. Intelligent guy, think for himself, and had some good ambitions. And I love sharing advice to people that age, if I can. And it makes sense for them. And so I'm not saying everything is that dark, but the people in our society that have grown kind of dark in their thinking, it seems to be even darker now. I was just watching a movie the other night. I guess I'll do a review. It was the latest Frankenstein movie, and you know, I mean, I remember the classics, you know, going back to the 30s, and then the remakes, and Young Frankenstein. I've actually got that on disc. That's the funniest movie I've ever seen. I mean, that was a classic. But you look at the one today, and my God, it's dark. Dark. Everything, I think a lot of new movies are just so dark today. I think it really changed around the early 2000s, honestly. That's why I watch classic movies. But as far as myself, I've been busy doing readings for the public, missing pet readings. People have been asking me, where have you been lately? I'll just say this, I've been spending a lot of time outside doing some working out and communing with nature, that kind of thing. I really need it. I've tried to kind of lie low a little bit because, I find that people have such intense issues going on right now in their lives when I'm doing readings that I really need a lot of offset time to chill. And that's the reason why I haven't been too active or doing the social media too much. And I see people still listen to this podcast and in large numbers. I actually looked today at some of the stats from when I first started this, and I have over 30,000 downloads on the podcast. So that's quite a number. That's quite a number, and I thank all of you for. I get letters. I've inspired some people, helped them think about things, and I continually do that in my readings. And I think that I have worked on some cases, some police cases, and I've been helping them. I found another suspect for an investigator. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 months ago. I didn't publicize it or anything, but I helped him catch the person. And but that was kind of similar to the case that I was working on in Texas that I did a podcast of. If you haven't listened to that podcast, you really should. You really should. I can hear somebody out in the audience saying, well, how do I know if I have COVID in my body? How do I get rid of it? Well, I think there's a lot of things that we can do. First of all, I think being outdoors, being active, I think taking care of ourselves is really important. The number one thing. I tend to find a lot of people who are over-medicated with stuff too, and that's not really good. It should be reevaluated by a doctor every now and then. Could be things making your immune system go down. Over time, I feel that as long as we don't reintroduce more stuff into our body artificially through injection, that kind of thing, I think eventually we can clear ourselves out. And there are a lot of natural things that can help. And I have actually gone, I would say, a pretty good chunk more vegetarian in the past year than I have. And a long time ago, I was a strict vegan for years and years. But I've kind of gone back to that, and I think it's been helping me. And there's a lot of alternatives to modern medicine. I'm not speaking against modern medicine at all, but I've also done some scary readings on that too. And I was watching this show talking about that and our technology, and I kind of look at that and just say, we are not technologically advanced. We are not advanced in any way, shape, or form of where we used to be. How can that be, where we used to be? I'm talking about probably millions of years ago. And those are the parts about the earth and I was watching a show about aliens and stuff the other night, and actually a lot of the information that they have is very accurate about where we've come from, saying that our DNA is not from this planet. Well, that's true. I knew that. I don't believe we just evolved here. That we came from little tadpoles and here we are. We once had a technology on this planet that surpassed anything that we have now. And, we were kind of left, actually. It's hard for me to calculate the numbers. Maybe 5,000-6,000 years ago, there was a drop-off point on this planet where either intelligence left this planet completely for other planets, but it was kind of like we had to start over, the Dark Ages, and then reinvent the wheel, and then reinvent the machine, and reinvent the technology. So actually we had a stopping point from a once very technological world, very advanced. Even modern medicine, we're about maybe a quarter of a way of where we should be. That's a long way to go. That's a long way to go. But, it is what it is. Does it mean that we don't know anything? No, absolutely not. We know a lot. But when I look at the earth and I focus on where we once were, because I know that there were societies here a long, long time ago, maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, that had very advanced technology. And it wasn't just one race of people, there were many that came to this planet. And that's just my opinion. But, scientists, well, I won't put them down, but it's kind of like it's kind of like a bunch of people trying to work on somebody's car engine, yet they've never worked on a car engine before. Okay? They're speculating, this little black plastic thing, this might do that, but we're not quite sure if it does that or not. Real mechanic's going to know. And bless them. Without them, we'd have a lot of issues. And that goes for the people working on the power lines out there, too. They're a tough lot. I was just seeing them out there working, and boy, they are a nice bunch of people. So we have a long ways to go in our society, but I really feel that mentally, we really need to ground ourselves. We need to go back to relationships. We need to get back to the heart. But yeah, some of these relationship readings have been really kind of eating at me a bit. There's a lot of them. And then, people have stress of having children involved in it, and then houses and money, and the simplicity is gone. Simplicity's kind of gone. We need to capture that again. I think we'd be a much happier society. Anyway, you can share your thoughts. I do tell people not to write to me about any cases, so you don't have to write to me, but I think this podcast, it should be, a lot of people go on YouTube. I think it's on my YouTube channel. And you can make a comment there. But those are just my thoughts for today. I would like to come back on here more in the future. I've been kind of on hiking trails for a while outside, so I do my job, and then I get outdoors. It's been kind of my passion. But we all need passion. And you're never too old to start. I remember the other day I was riding my motorcycle, which is more of a classic bike, classic styling, and they've been making them for 100 years. And this guy looked at me, and he an older guy, but he looked pretty strong. And he says, I used to have one of those. I love the way they sound. And then he says, but I'm too old for them now. I'm looking at him. He's walking, he's smiling, he's a big guy. I'm like, too old? Is there an age limit to doing something you enjoy? I don't believe so. You can always make it work. Can always make it work. So never cave into the getting older part, and never believe what you hear, especially the obsession going on about the political landscape. People are seeing such misinformation out there, and they just look so sick. And some of them are getting sick. And I'm like, please, you got to relax. You got to stop watching the media, okay? You need to go put on some hiking boots and go for a long walk every single day. It's that important. So, anyway, I hope to hear from you. I'm going to leave it where it is today. And I really hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving week coming up. Okay, so be well.